I'm Tammy. Today we're going to talk about plank and side plank. Plank is frequently used in yoga, especially if you do a yoga flow class, but it's also used in a lot of other exercise programs as well. And that's because it is an awesome multitasker for strength. It will strengthen abs, chest, arms, shoulders, all together at the same time. But it does bring us opportunity for injury, especially in the shoulders. So it's important that we understand the alignment of plank and side plank, which I'm going to talk about today. And also, if you're doing a class that has a lot of plank and side plank in it, you might get tired. So once you start to tire, those muscles start to weaken, and they don't necessarily want to stay in the alignment. So we need to keep reminding ourselves to come back to that alignment, or we can use a modification. And I'll talk to you about modifications throughout this little mini too. So let's start with kneeling plank. So we're going to come to all fours, and we're going to talk about hands first. So hands are going to be right underneath the shoulders, shoulder width apart. And we want to use all the surface of the hand to spread the stress and the weight. So you want to make sure your fingers are nice and wide apart. And probably for most people, that means the middle fingers are facing towards the top of the mat here. Those wrists, again, are right underneath the shoulders, and we're going to be pushing the floor away. So one thing you can sort of play with here and notice the engagement in the shoulders is let your chest drop and your shoulders shrug up towards your ears. We don't want that. We want this. So we want to keep pushing the floor away, widening the shoulder blades, and then moving the shoulder blades down towards the tailbone. From here, we're going to bring the knees back. We want the hips in front of the knees, not stacked over the knees. So we're going to bring the knees back so that I'm making this long line. So the crown of the head through the neck and the shoulders and the hips are in one nice diagonal line here. And then once we get ready to go to our full plank, we're going to tuck our toes, lift our knees, and our heels now will also be part of that line. So it's important to have that shoulder engagement. It's also important to have the core engagement, and I'll get to talk about that a little bit more in a minute here. But sometimes you might hear the teacher say, pull your belly button towards your spine. That's the cue to try to get you to engage your core. But if that actually makes you round a little bit and create a little bit of rounding in the back in a tuck, then think about low abs. So think about underneath the belly button, that space of your navel underneath your belly button. You want to pull that in, okay? And then we would keep that engaged throughout the whole time as we're holding this pose. So a couple modifications here. Obviously, this one can be hard on the wrists. So if you have wrist injury or some problems with your wrist and you want to do this with fist, you can do that with a fist instead. Same idea, the fist just goes right in line with the shoulders here, but we can also come down to forearms. So forearms can come, again, directly underneath the shoulders. Now when you come down to the floor and you're in the forearm plank here, it is easier on the wrist, but it actually becomes harder on the core because now we have to work against gravity a little bit more. We're lower to the floor. So actually you could use that in certain classes. If you want to work strength in your shoulders one time, maybe you focus on the plank. If you want to work strength in your core, maybe you skip the planks with the wrists and you use the forearm plank. All right, so let's take this now into a side plank. So again, from here, from our all fours, we're going to make a kickstand. So I'm going to swing this right leg out behind me, and I'm going to come into a line with my wrist, my knee, and my opposite foot. I want to make sure that my knee is also underneath my hip. If you feel like the floor is too far away from you and it's sort of getting in the way of your alignment, then use a block or a soup can, or something that can bring the floor to you and can come up a little bit higher. But we want to make sure we make that nice line here. So we have, again, hand, knee, which is directly underneath the hip, and our foot in line. That back foot should be sealed to the floor. That's going to help support you in this pose. So you're going to use your foot to push into the floor to help you in this pose. benefit, another bonus benefit of kneeling side plank is we get this hip flexion as well. So we get all those other strengtheners, but we get this hip flexion, and then we're going to get also an oblique stretch here. Now, a lot of times you'll hear the teachers say, keep your side bodies long, and when they say that, they mean both side bodies. Like, we want to keep this side body that's underneath us long, and this side body that's on the top long. And you'll notice that is said in other poses in yoga too. For instance, like triangle. Okay, same thing. So we want to be pulling the top shoulder back. Maybe the extension here, maybe the arm extends up towards the sky, or maybe that arm comes over your ear. And we're still making the long line here. All right, so now moving this into a full side plank, I'm going to keep that wrist and foot in line, and I'm going to bring my other foot back. So you have a bunch of options here. You want to stack feet. You can stack one on top of the other. You can also put one foot in front of the other, and that might help keep you a little bit more stable. You might see people lift the leg. You might see people put the leg in triangle. Nice little pro tip for you. If you're trying to lift the leg but you lose your balance, let the foot come back behind you and go right into a wild thing. And it'll be like you meant to do that. All right, perfect. So let's get back to that core again, like I said earlier. So this probably isn't going to be something you do while you're in class, but maybe you want to work on this at home and understanding the core engagement part of this. Take a block, put the block in between your thighs, and then come into that plank position. So here we go again. We got the wrists underneath the shoulders. Our hands are shoulder width apart. Our fingers are nicely spread wide. I'm going to untuck my toes here and lift my legs. Now I'm going to squeeze this block. So notice that when I squeeze the block, I engage my whole core. Starts with the legs and it moves up into the core. Do that without the block now and notice the difference. All right, so that's the kind of engagement that you want to keep throughout the whole pose. That goes for plank and side plank as well. And that might be a great reminder, like we can get into habits where we forget about alignment all the time. So that might be something you just try at home once in a while. Make sure that you still remember what that engagement feels like, okay? And then another thing we can do with a prop is a strap. And this will just show you more about opening the chest. So we can come back to that kneeling side plank and let the hand come onto the strap here, the hand that's down on the floor. And then I'm just going to extend my arm as I pull on this strap and keep moving my hand up the strap. Watch your neck that you don't choke yourself. And keep opening the chest here. So this will just give you a nice feeling of openness. And again, that's something you might hear your teachers say in other poses. Again, triangle, or maybe half balanced moon, feeling that same openness across the chest. Let's see, I was going to say something else about plank and side plank. And if you notice throughout class that you're tiring and maybe your alignment is starting to get a little lacking, take a modification. Maybe you start the class doing a couple kneeling versions, and then by the end of the class you get to the full version. So maybe you start with the full versions, and maybe by the end of the class you move to kneeling, or you move to forearm, or you move to your fists if your wrists are having some trouble. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So if you are doing a lot of plank and side plank and you're feeling that a lot in your wrist, we can do a little stretching, and anytime you need to do this in class, make sure you take a little break. You can come to the floor and do these little stretches. So press your palms together and then press the backs of the palms together. So this is kind of a version that we don't get to very often, and you'll feel that. And then you can start to just move your hands in like a circle. So we move back and forth and get this nice massage in your wrist here. Another way you can stretch out your wrist is come to that all fours position. Instead of having your fingers facing forward, have them face towards your knees and then push down into the floor. If you want more sensation here, you can start to shift your hips back towards your heels. Go slow because you'll start to feel it. Might be a little too much. And if it is, you just come on back, forward. Just stack over the wrists again. All right, and anytime you need a little stretch like that, make sure you take it in class. Just come to your knees and take a little rest and take that option too. Thank you guys for sharing some time with me, checking out our mini minis. Make sure you go to Balance Webster's webpage. You can get a link there to our YouTube channel. All the 12-minute minis will be on there along with all of our other classes. Some great stuff there for you to just check in and every once in a while refine your practice. Thanks again. Talk to you soon. Bye.